Welcome. I'm Kevin Miller. This is a podcast for your personal evolution. In this episode, how to do good in the world in a way that fits you and actually makes a difference. One of the greatest joys and fulfillments of our lives is helping another person. Not through just the base obligations we may have to family, but reaching out when we don't have to and helping lift another person up. But I find often two problems that arise for most all of us. We don't know where to plug in to really help others in a way that matters. And when we do see an opportunity, it often doesn't really fit who we are. So we have good intent and we don't get to apply it. Well, cue up my guest for today, Neil Ghosh. Neil is a renowned social entrepreneur, humanitarian, and philanthropist. He's written a book that to me is both inspiring and incredibly equipping as a resource manual for doing good in the world. The book is aptly titled Doing More Good, Inspiring Lessons from Extraordinary People. The foreword is from the Dalai Lama himself, and the book's endorsed by such notable figures such as President Bill Clinton and Nobel Peace Laureate Professor Muhammad Yunus. Neil has the book in 3 sections: sit, rise, and act. And they showcase, in essence, 3 ways we can serve the world according to our personality style. And you'll hear me talk about how I find that, oh gosh, this one fits me specifically. Then in each category, he highlights 10 or so people, some famous, some not, and he shares how they uniquely bettered the world and the lesson that we can learn from what and how they did it. And then shares at the end of each story a list of organizations we can engage with to help in a similar way, plus ways that we can embody that way of serving in our lives today, right where we are, right now. I was incredibly inspired by the conversation with Neil and feel you'll leave enthused and equipped to give of yourself in new and uplifting ways. You can find Neil's book, Do More Good, of course, anywhere. And if this is inspiring to you, you'll want to, because it has all those resources at the end of every chapter. And you can connect with him at Neil Ghosh, GHOSH.net. And hey, if you want personal guidance in applying the knowledge and information you're going to hear today, that's what I so enjoy helping people with, finding the right guide for you to really engage and integrate these aspects into your life. Just connect with me via email, kmiller@kevinmiller.co. All right, coming up next, Neil Ghosh and doing more good in the world. Let's evolve ourselves today. Well, Neil, I get the privilege of following my curiosity on these shows and my interest. And I really appreciate what I saw of you, of just a curiosity in other people and in lessons and learning lessons out there. And I think that that's what really initially grabbed me from your book, was just your own openness and pursuit of what are the lessons I can learn from, especially from these people. And it really kind of caused me to look. Well, honestly, I think I want to do a similar exercise just for my own life. So thank you for the inspiration.
Thank you. No, it's a pleasure. I listen to some of your other podcasts before coming in, and I'm equally inspired. So looking forward to this conversation.
Well, even the outline of how you did the book, that you looked at these areas of life that we can make an impact in the world, which I want us to walk through. But even the structure of how you addressed each person and the lesson. You started off with, here's the person, here's the lesson that I learned, here's our connection, here's how they bettered the world, and here's how they made me better, how they made you better. And then, of course, giving us the opportunity to take action on these, where you literally listed, here's organizations you can get involved with, and here's things you can do just on your own. Again, Neil, I thought, what a great exercise for me to think through who's impacted my life, who has influenced me, and what is the lesson. I think just going through that structure would be a giant benefit to my life and anyone's.
No, thank you. It was deliberate. It was not something came quickly. I think it was a learn as I started writing it. And like anything in life, it's input from also many people. Like this conversation, anytime I do something, I try to be intentional and try to think of, not because I'm doing it, is it benefiting anybody?
Yeah.
So I think I went through that exercise as diligently as possible. So what you're seeing is 3 years of work, but I'm happy that the structure, I'm glad actually you talked about the structure, because it was not like this in the beginning. So it's evolved. Particularly the last part you picked up, Kevin, is I'm very proud of, because it's not many people picked up so easily as you did, is the action part.
Yeah.
I didn't want to write something yes, inspiration is necessary. Yes, motivation is necessary. But if I just get motivated and inspired but don't know what to do about it, it's kind of a half-hearted journey. So I think if I look at the 3 pillars of the book, I will say definitely purpose, empathy, and action. So thank you for picking that up. Yeah.
Well, it is. It's something that has weighed on me for a long time. It's so tempting just to get more information, more knowledge. It's inspiring. It's a dopamine hit to get information. And yet how easy it is just to go on to the next new thing, the next information, and not have looked at it and go, how do I want to make a change? How do I did that? Here's your book. So I've gone through it, front to back. Okay. Now what am I going to do with it? What am I going to integrate? I like that word. Am I going to integrate any of it into my life, or am I just going to get a good feeling and then go on to the next book? So yeah, I'm very grateful for how you did it.
Thank you. Yep.
Looking at this overall, we're in a culture right now, feels so polarized, so at conflict with each other, with issues. And that also stood out that you picked out, here are people who actually imparted something. They took what they cared about. They took what they were passionate about, or what broke their heart, or what frustrated them, or they saw a problem, and they then took some type of action. That again is something that speaks to me, Neil. There are things that I care about, and you kind of helped me audit myself and go, where am I making an effort to actually do something? And it's just so easy to sit and complain, to be dissatisfied, and yet we don't do something. Though, as you said, you kind of cited that a lot of times we don't because we literally just don't know what to do. Fair?
It's fair. And I think you touched on a couple of points, if I may comment on that, Kevin. You mentioned in the beginning of this particular sentence, you said we are living in a time of division. I want to touch on that. Mm-hmm. And you talked about action. So let me try a couple of things that I think will resonate with you and your audience. One of the things I'm really trying to speak about, and context is important like any conversation. So one context I must, for full transparency, I'm a citizen of the United States, but I came here when I was 21 years old, 22. Yeah. So it's important to share that with you because I have seen in America from the lens of a 22-year-old. I was fascinated. I was energized. I was happy. I was excited. And coming back to your first sentence you mentioned, it's disheartened me when I see that we are so much division, so much disruption. And it makes me sad. But making sad is not an action. So what I'm trying to talk about is, from my personal experience, and maybe that's another episode of this conversation with you, I'm harping on the fact that empathy is not a blue state value or a red state value. It's an American value. It's in the DNA of all Americans. And I can speak from my experience in Louisville, Kentucky, to Wyoming, to Florida, to across America. And there are stories I can share with you at some point in time. And that is an important conversation to have, that this is what I think we have to start from, that in spite of the division and the disruption, we have to find a way to find common grounds. And that's one of the reasons I'm joining, Kevin, a lot of organizations across America. And I'm going to name a few of them for your podcast. Listen First, Braver Angels, Us United, Stand Together. There are many. And I'm deliberately joining them to have this kind of conversation at the grassroots level, at a local gas station, at a firehouse, at a church, at a synagogue. So we meet common people in America who are the basic values of America. The other part I keep talking about is democracy. You talked about action. You were born, I'm assuming, in the United States, which in the world is known as the most powerful democracy in the world. I was born in India, which by definition, the largest democracy in the world, by definition, because of its sheer population. And by fear of America's wealth and many factors, America is considered the most powerful democracy in the world. And I am very conscious of the fact that we have been somewhat taken it for granted because we haven't seen anything else. Kevin, I traveled to 6 continents, so I have been exposed to some other places that don't have the privilege that you do and I do. We speak openly. We write about things that we believe in. And what I'm encouraging people, everyone, particularly young generation, that democracy is messy. Democracy is not as it takes time. But this is the only form of governance that people like Kevin and Neil has a voice.
Yeah.
That's the only form of governance that you and I have a voice. So to preserve that, we really have to be mindful that it takes patience, it takes perseverance, and it takes participation. Yeah. The third part is very important, Kevin. That means we have to participate in a democracy. That means it's not about voting. And I don't talk about a lot in the book on this particular issue. It's more than voting. It's having this conversation you and I'm having. It's having conversation. It's knowing what's really happening and have a voice. And that brings back to the section you talked about, action. If you look at the section, chapter after chapter, I provided without any, you can be pro-gun or anti-gun. That's not the issue I'm talking about. All I'm saying, whatever you believe in, participate in a discussion, make sure your voice is heard. Make sure your voice is heard. So thanks for bringing it up. That's really one of my passions that's driving me, that we must speak out, whatever our belief is, in a way that is cordial, that is reasonable, and have a dialogue. And that is what absolutely needed in this country.
Yeah, the book, what you've put together, almost a resource guide. I could theoretically go on social media where there's plenty of debate going on at all times between people and say, hey, you guys, like you said, here's your debate on guns. And regardless of where you stand, here's a resource. You can actually get involved and do something about it as opposed to just arguing and complaining about it, and take action. And this, again, as a part of your book, I really appreciate too, because I'm sensitive to people's styles. You're not saying, okay, everybody needs to go take action in the same way. And you, of course, divided the book into the kind of the 3 areas. And I looked at that and I thought, you could make a case for you introverts, here's how you can do it. For you extroverts, here's how you can do it. For those of you who are angry, okay, here's an outlet. For those of you who just are heartbroken, here's ways and resources that fit you, that give you a viable opportunity to actually do something about it. And I do like that. I do like that push. I mean, I need it as well. I hope that I think that I am doing some of the things in the book, that I am making a difference. I hope this podcast, is a good piece of making a difference in the culture, but I can always do more. And you really laid it out and took away my excuses, Neil.
No, I appreciate it a lot. I think I'm also glad you picked up that that not everybody will act or react in the same way. We're all different individuals. No one size fits all. So I think to expect something from me because I do it is not the right way. We all have our style. We all have our comfort zone. But take that into consideration and do what we can. I'll give you one example, which is a little different. One of the word I use, and I come to that in the later part of the podcast, when I go to my gas station and take my gas and put 50 cents to St. Jude, I call myself a micro philanthropist. Mm. So I don't have to write a big check to be a big donor. I think I'm just trying to make a point that we all are capable and responsible to do something within our means. That's a key word, within our means and within our comfort zone.
Gosh, that reminds me, Neil, we had not long ago, Paul Rice. I had him on the show. He's got a new book, and he's, of course, the founder of Fair Trade. That's so much of the takeaway. I did it out of my own curiosity. Like, okay, I know about fair trade. I don't really know what's happening. How legit is it? And so, of course, read his book, had him on the show. We've talked since then. And I now feel like when I go to the grocery store today, I'll be looking at my purchases and I'll make whatever ones that I can, and I'll make them with fair trade products. And there, with my dollar that I would have spent the dollar anyway, like, here's the dollar for these tomatoes, here's a dollar for the same tomatoes over here, and they're fair trade. I know that I am helping other people. Excellent. Makes me feel good. Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent example. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's what I feel like you just opened the doors of for these social issues, these things that we care about. And everybody here in this show is going to be, they care about things. They have opinions. They want to make an impact in the world. And let's start there. That is really where you lead off with this. You even use the quote by Alfred Adler that the greatest task for any person is to find meaning in his or her life. We want our lives to have some meaning, to matter and we'll probably get onto it from if we have a child, like you and I both have a child, that's a way that we can impact the world and have meaning there. But so many other opportunities in our work, in our giving to find meaning and have a positive impact in people's lives. To some degree, I grew up with parents who really looked at, the aspects of getting kind of lost in my own needs. And then the best way to get out of that was to find other people in need and go serve them. What you talk about this, what a privilege, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It is.
The people in the book here. So you took people from all around the world, a lot of names that we know, a lot of famous names we know, some that we don't. And to what I mentioned before, you looked at 3 different categories, in essence, of how these people imparted something to the world. And I want to walk through those. First one was sit. And you said sit. This is people, you said, who have done the inner work. They've addressed their character. You said shaped by spiritual, intellectual, and societal influences, that those are the governing factors in their contributions to the world. So to paraphrase the concept of the category, these are people who maybe did it from writing a book or from imparting their knowledge in some way. They may not have been up on stage somewhere necessarily. They may not have been at a rally somewhere. They may not have been political activists in that way, but they took it and did it from this category that fit their life. Is that fair? Relevant?
That's fair. Okay. Only thing I will add to that, Kevin, that my hope is, and I say hope deliberately again, that as I write more, as I speak more, you will get to hear stories of people not as well known. Because this was the first book of this kind, I wanted to really profile some people. And the reason I'm mentioning this to you, because some of the characters here may have done all these 3, sit, rise, and act. But most of us, like people like regular citizens like me, we don't have to be in all 3 places. So I want to make sure we create a comfort zone that we don't feel we have to be everything. So that was a deliberate reason. But saying that the characters in the book some of them are so based on their, nature of their work, because based on their reach, because they may have crossed over in all 3, quite possibly. Just want to make sure we mention that to you. But
okay, no, that's. Yeah, that's relevant. And I do see that. And I could say that all of us may participate in some of these 3 areas. Well, and I should name them: sit, rise, and act. Sit, rise, and act. That we'll go through here. And in that, I was just in Denver this past weekend visiting some of my older kids, and they had I think it was a Pride festival, honoring Pride. I had some kids who actually went to that event, and they went out and, out in the heat and out the people and the noise, and they did that. I had others who that's not how they would enact. They did it in maybe a sit aspect, and they're participating, one who participates in that in his work, another one who participates that in their writing and pursuit of psychology and whatnot. So this is a great example.
This is a fantastic example. I mean, I think you have articulated, maybe I will steal this from you now. So yeah, I mean, it's a classic example. You do what you feel comfortable with. That's what I'm trying to really harp on this point. And if I may, I don't want to lose this thought. You talked about your childhood, and I think it's, when I think about this book, and I kind of ask myself, what drove me to write this book?
Yeah.
And you touched on another point, and I'm just doing 2 + 2 together to make sure I do convey that message. One of the things I saw as a very young boy, very young, because I grew up in a place where you can't avoid poverty. I mean, there's poverty everywhere. I mean, I can go to some place in DC, I see poverty in some extent. But when I grew up, it's hard to, because of the per capita population, the density of the population is so much, it's hard to avoid. It's running on your face.
Yeah.
And I've traveled to Africa in many places. But what I'm trying to mention on this particular point, that I've seen the power of deliberate small action and the impact of that in another individual. And that really stayed on me when I was very young. It's not a big action. It's not something huge action, but a small action. But that action of small action, the person who's receiving it, for him or her, it was so huge that transformed the person's life. So, and it stayed with me. But then when I started traveling across the world, in East Africa, West Africa, Latin America, Asia, toughest place like South Sudan and in many places, that lesson that I learned as a very young boy kind of reinforced. I have seen the same thing in these local communities. It's all about local communities. And I think same is true. We'll come back to this in America. We have to focus on our communities, our neighborhood more and more. But the same thing was reinforced in me when I was traveling. So, wow. What I've seen as a child is same thing in these countries. So that reinforced. And the third thing was the fact, you mentioned another point which came back to me. All of us, and I think it's true, all of us, you, me, your friends, your kids, your neighbor, I would say we want to do good. Whether we can or not is a different conversation. We want to do something, most of us. And what triggered this was people asking me repeatedly, Neil, because they knew, and I will come back, I worked in private sector, I worked in government, I had a top secret clearance from the US Defense once upon a time as a contractor. So I worked in many different sectors. Because of my journey, people asked me, Neil, how can I help? And I heard this for the last 15, 20 years, and I said, what? So many people want to do something. So I said, okay, now I know the stories that small action can create enormous impact. And I know how many different ways we can create an impact. And these people are asking me, what can I do? That was kind of my motivation for this book, which, kind of standing on 3 pillars we talked about, the purpose, empathy, and action. So I wanted to mention that because you talked about how almost everybody we know wants to do something in our own way. So.
And I'm that person in many ways. I mean, I'm sitting here in my home studio in Colorado, up in the mountains. I'm not in a big city. Even if I was, I don't know how to engage with a lot of the things that I care about. Just don't have, you got to go do the research for it. But a lot of what you find that's what you helped me see, may not fit. It may just not be again, I'm not somebody who's going to go to a rally. I wouldn't do that for anything. I don't even go to concerts much. I'm more of an introvert, and it's very chaotic for me. But how can I serve again in a way that fits me? And how can I serve at all in regards to these issues, which that does feel like a bit of a soft spot for me. I feel like we're in a place where we have more division, as you said, more contention and more opinions that are being shared every day. And yet for the amount of opinions that we hear and vitriol and arguments on issues, how many of those folks are actually stepping forth and participating was your word, participating in it anyway. I don't think there's anybody who will listen to this show who doesn't have the capacity to participate in some way. And I think that that's some of what I felt you opened us up to.
Another thing you mentioned, what worries me, and I'm going to, anytime I say worries me, then I have to give an answer, then what do I do to reduce the worry? So one thing worries me is the noise, so much noise. And it's like an overload of information. So I deal quite a bit, and this is something you mentioned, Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. It really impacted me significantly in my life. And this is before even I heard his name. As a child, I always kind of was, what is my purpose? And this has been my journey to find this concept of purpose in many different shape or forms. I will share a story that I heard. Some people call it's a Chinese wisdom. I'm not sure, but it sounds like it. It says something like that if you want to be happy for an hour, take a nap. If you want to be happy for a little bit longer, for a day, go fishing or do something that makes you happy. If you want to be happy for a month, inherit a fortune. But if you want to be happy for a lifetime, help someone. And there are scientific research, which is beyond my skill, but I have looked into that, many scientific research from reputable institutions that has proven with data, because at the end of the day, data matters, that whether it's psychological, whether it's neurological, whether it's physical, in our physical well-being, whether it's longevity and our social connection, once we find a purpose in our life, it helps in all different ways. It's amazing what the research has identified. And I encourage the readers to look into that because these are connected conversations. Because if we just talk about the problem and not talk about the solution, there is no takeaway. So there are scientific research to prove the purpose helps. And then you say, okay, now there's so much data that says in all different ways, purpose is helping me. So it's a selfish reason. And you know that. I think you talked about when we do something, it makes me happy. It's as simple as that. So I'm okay with the selfishness. I'm perfectly comfortable with this selfish behavior that it making me happy, right? Yeah. So there are medical proof to that. So if that's the case, then we have established that. Then the question comes back to your point. Purpose, Kevin, comes to us. It doesn't yell at us. It softly talks to us. So Kevin, the question is, if I'm getting up in the morning, I'm inundated with news and feed on my social media, and I'm angry, I'm living a life of reactive life. And I don't want to live a reactive life. I want to live a proactive life. I will not live a reactive life. I want to live a proactive life. I want to live a life with purpose. So to do that, I have to somehow figure out how do I reduce the noise. And again, you said something, it doesn't fit, not one size fits all. For maybe just taking a walk for an hour. Maybe that's the only hour I have away from my phone and my noise. I have time to think. Because we are always reacting, we don't have time to think at all. I'm letting the news lead me and making me angry or making me sad or making me excited or happy, whatever it is. So I am, deliberately trying to take time away from the noise so that the purpose can speak to me in a quieter form when there is no noise. So I'm strongly encouraging everybody to find that moment so you can hear your purpose.
Yeah, I read that in the book, and you said it's always speaking to us. And that was exactly my thought, though, that I have to slow down. I've got to get rid of the noise and the chaos to even hear what that is. Because with this, one thing I wanted to pull out too is we can care about a lot of things. So I can care about a lot of issues. I can care. Is there any issue that I would say, oh, I don't care? I would hope that I care about a lot, but I can't participate in everything. So back to purpose, to look at what is the thing that really calls to me. And there we bring in, how do you think about it, Neil? Because you hear a lot about purpose. You hear a lot about passion. I've always resonated to a greater degree, I think, with what breaks my heart, what burdens me even. And I tend to come at wanting to provide solutions for those things that, it grieves me for humanity, or even something that I found out about myself that I grieve that I didn't understand that, and that I hurt myself, maybe hurt others with as well. So even as you talk, or like you go through this book and all these people that you have in there, how many or what would you say about that in regards to people who came to things through their passions, through their purpose? How did they feel? Did a lot of them, it seems like a lot of them came to things that really did, I'll use that term again, it broke their heart, and they wanted to address it. And that's the thing that they participated in, because you can't do everything.
Now, I think you're hitting all the right points. And that's another reason I keep saying, because whenever we try to solve so many things, naturally we feel helpless. So we don't do anything at all. Yeah. That's a natural reaction. It's so overwhelming.
Yes.
That it is then you automatic reaction. Well, I am nobody. What can I do? I'm just a little guy in Maryland. What can I do? And I am in this journey to say, no, you can't. As you just said, I cannot solve all this thing. I have to pick something that speaks to me, whatever that thing is. And it's different for, I give you, just to make it a little bit more specific. I have friends who are absolutely passionate about environment. And that's great. Mm-hmm. I care about it too. But in my level, it's maybe not number one, right? It's there. I have friends who are absolutely mortified when they hear about child trafficking. Every time they heard child trafficking, the child can be trafficked. It is so painful for this person. They break out and go on and on and on. There are many issues, So coming back to your point, let's pick one. Some people is democracy, my voice. Do I have the right to say, right to form my opinion without being subjected to some, negative impact? So for them, free press is a huge issue, freedom of press, right? So all I'm saying, I'm telling my friends, same thing I'm sharing with you. You can't do everything. I have friends who are wealthy, very wealthy, some of them, and they donate money. And I keep saying them, try to focus on one or two things that you can make an impact in some shape or form. So yes, I think now coming back to your point about the individuals I met and I had fortune to work with. If you think one example of a classic one, Kevin Bacon, he's a classic example. It was a game that some university or college student was playing. He didn't like it in the beginning, this whole 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon game. Yeah. He didn't like it at all. But then he realized, how can I turn it into something good? And now his foundation is doing amazing things, 6 Degrees Foundation, and I know the executive director running it. And there are examples like that you take something, one thing that you think about the chef Jose Andres. He's an immigrant. He's a great chef, but he took his ability, skills, and he realized that one of the things I can do is get to people who are hungry at the war zone. And the kind of work Jose is doing, it's absolutely phenomenal. There I can go on the list. So I think I picked on this individual that I had either chance to meet or work with some capacity. I say that gives us inspiration. And there are people who are not Kevin Bacon and Jose Andres. There are people in the book, you will find Tracy San Martin. She is in Washington, D.C. She runs a decent-sized nonprofit. And I have watched her for the last 15 to 20 years, how someone can improve their own profession. She's one of the greatest critics of her own profession, trying always to get it better in terms of transparency, in terms of governance. So there are all different things, but they all found one thing that they believe that's their skill. If you notch it down to farther down, I would say sometimes you just mentor somebody. You don't have to do anything else. Find a person that they need your mentorship. That's it. That's good enough for a purpose. That you're mentoring somebody who needs mentorship, and there are so many of them. Anyway, I can
you hit on multiple points there that helped me. I mean, one of the statements you made in the book was something to the effect of, we often think if we are going to do good, like if we hear the show, okay, I want to do more good out in the world, I have to do more. And you pointed out that sometimes we can actually do good by doing less. And in your example, you said, how about being less judgmental towards people, which is always a good reminder for me. But it got me thinking about that. I mean, I think about it. You mentioned the environment. Do I care about the environment? Yes. Is that a major focal point of investment in my life? Not really, but what can I do? Well, I can do less consumerism. I can buy less stuff. I can drive my car less and not take that extra drive across town that's using gas. I can, I'm so grateful our area now, they don't do plastic bags in the grocery stores. You had to bring your own bag. And what can I do that's less? It's not always having to add to make an impact. And you talked about, child trafficking like that. Do I care? Oh my gosh. How could you say you don't care about that? What am I doing about it? Nothing. Just admittedly, I don't, I'm not, now you've given me resources if I want to, right, but I'm actually more prone to look at, okay, where are the areas? I mean, health and wellness is a big one for me. The American medical system, I think, is broken. I've invested a lot into alternatives and opportunities there. So again, to look at those and go, yeah, I like that idea. You kind of helped bring that to my attention. Like, oh my gosh, there's so much in this book. There's so many things to address. I can't do them all, but I can pick which ones are really near and dear to my heart. Which ones feel, I mean, you talk about that. You talk also just about we all have giftings. We all have certain skills and abilities that are relevant to us. Probably we can find a place to engage those into something that matters. We're not being called to go do something that has no fit for us. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And I also tried my best. In the book, you will see I mentioned 3 organizations in the United States called Charity Navigator, GuideStar, and Charity Watch. What they are giving, a lot of my friends who will not know them, but the reason I mentioned it because general tendency of a lot of people is trust is a big factor in your life. Trust is a big factor in life. In anything, trust is an issue. Do we trust them? So what I try to do is not comprehensive or exhaustive list, but before I list them, I try to look into these 3 so-called organizations who monitors nonprofit or organizations that are doing in civil society, and they kind of rate them. So I tried my best to make sure they have good ratings under the 3 categories I mentioned. Again, this is a process because we have to build a trust among people that whatever I'm doing, are they the right organization? So one of the attempts I made through this rating agency, okay, they have rated them in a decent way. So maybe that's something I can trust. Okay.
I appreciate that. Gosh, it actually reminds me of something, Neil, that is relevant for this conversation too. There was a time I grew up going to church, going to a Christian church. And I did that for a lot of my life. I don't, at this point, attend church, but when I did, we would tithe. That was a part of going to church and tithing. And I really came from that kind of a strict construct of you tithe 10%. And I realized, Neil, at one point that every week we would go, or every month, however often I did it. And back then I'd write a check, out of a checkbook, write a check and do it. And I realized I'm just kind of paying it like a bill. I really have no connection. I don't know what they're doing with it. I mean, I know that they're supporting the church and they support some organizations, but I have no connection to it. It really doesn't mean anything to me. Now, I'm not saying anything against tithes. Please don't anyone hear that at all. That was just me owning my own perspective. And I really was disappointed in myself with that. And we at that time got involved in a Native American reservation and a children's home and decided to take our tithe or take a portion of it. I can't remember at the time. And we wanted to apply it to people who were in our face, that we were actually connected with in some way. What are your thoughts on that? Because, I mean, there are things, if I want to help child trafficking, I don't know what I'm going to do other than send a check to an organization, and that's great. But I did experience a big shift for me when I also participated in something that was hands-on.
That's another example of we all our mind operates differently. And there's not is one is right, one is wrong, right? And I keep mentioning that. So in the exact analogy you gave me, I'll give you a couple of examples. So because I traveled for this kind of work in many other countries, including United States, I'll come to that in a minute. There's an organization called SOS Children Villages, which I was involved for some time. I was the CEO of USA operation. And we have homes in Florida and in Chicago. This is a local organization. Not all of them are orphans, but there are kids that have nowhere to go. Yeah. They stay at this place and you provide them shelter and, all the other things. And then you take a smaller organizations that are not a global entity. You talk about whether it's, I will support sometime our local first responder. I have a lot of respect for first responder, for example. I'm just making one example. So I think you have to kind of listen to what you feel comfortable, whatever cause you are. I have friends who specifically support animal shelter because that's where his heart is, animal shelter, local animal shelter. So I think what I'm trying to say, my point is coming back to judgment. I don't think I am suggesting one or the other. My suggestion is that there are global organizations with global reach, which if you're caring for that, you can go for that. There are local organizations, local reach, doing amazing things locally. You support that. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. The question is finding them and be part of it. And some people like you mentioned want to see directly the result. Then you volunteer to some of them, and then you can see real result. You can go and spend a day there, and some of them welcome that. So you get to see where your money is going.
I appreciate that. I think you said the word. I wrote it down as you were talking about looking at what are the things that we authentically connect with. What do we really connect with? Which interesting, Neil. I've had some journeys that were difficult in that. Even like that, us talking. So we got really involved in a children's home on a reservation. And it connected initially because it was kids. Well, I have a lot of kids who come from a home where they lack for nothing. And so to go down there and for us all to see these kids who were abandoned and had nothing, there was a direct connection. And so it made sense. But as time went on, for my part, it proved really difficult because it was a very apathetic environment. And I realized that not that I couldn't help and serve in some way, but not really in a way that was connected to my own giftings. I tend to work better with people who do have a desire and help direct and expand that desire. And I was working with kids who had so little desire, and I found myself feeling frustrated and incompetent. And then I was able to see people who really flourished in that environment. And I looked at what are ways that I can help the organization that may be different than me being directly involved with the kids. Well, can I help with the donor involvement? And I did. I ended up working with the founder of the organization to help with the business side of it. So again, looking at those things of going, what is an authentic fit for you? I kind of did that the hard way. I didn't have your book back then. So
I can just bring back a memory. I was, this January, I spent around 14 of the young kids in Calcutta, where one of the organizations I helped to move some fund from a U.S. entity. And I sat with this around 13 or 14 young boys and girls. And I can't explain the feeling because they're all supported by this entity. Mm-hmm. And they're brilliant kids. They're no different than my kid, who just happened to have me and all the things needed in life. Yeah. But these kids, so I had tremendous satisfaction knowing that because I helped channel this fund, and to see these 13 or 14 kids I met, I had lunch with them. They will be a nurse, they will be an engineer, or whatever they will do in life. That satisfaction is sometimes, you cannot attach a dollar amount to that. So yeah, I mean, I'm agreeing with you what you just said. So sometimes it's easy to find those direct links, sometimes it's don't. And we just have to find a way to, find what suits our particular time and capacity.
I do want to. I named out these 3 categories, and I never went back through them. Was again was sit, rise, and act. So you had somewhere 9, 12 people in each area, and you gave that example of something that they had done kind of within that category. Not that they hadn't done things in other categories as well, but with sit. I want to understand it well myself. So sit was, again, you kind of talked about the inner work, people who've worked on their character and use that to contribute to the world, to a degree. The next one then was rise. And these are what I kind of pulled out of that was people whose inspiration, I think you wrote insight or indignation, I like that word, had either a gradual realization on them or they had a breakthrough moment that compelled them to stand up and speak out. And you wrote the people in this section are united in their ability to identify new ways to make change happen. So that was the next category. So we had sit, and this one is rise. Maybe define those a little bit in your own words for us.
Yeah, I think the motivation was exactly what you said. And I put a caveat when I started the conversation that some of the individuals we picked, of course, they are in all the area.
Yeah.
What I was trying to demonstrate when I picked people on the, let's give an example. My parents, I put them on sit. I mean, they are not active. Of course, my father was activist, but in generally, I always call my mother like a 24-hour empathy machine, churning out empathy. She never looked at who is receiving it and never made judgment or any expectation. So very much a sit kind of a mode that this is what it is, who I'm about. She always said, one of the things was, if you're nothing good to say, don't say anything at all. So that was kind of her mindset, and I try to learn that. So that's a great example of sit, and there are many in that category. I picked, for example, Jose Andres on the rise. Jose had a skill. He's a chef, world famous chef. And he kind of said, I have to rise up and tackle something much bigger than where I am in Bethesda, I need to go to Gaza. I need to go to, Ukraine and wherever, many places he goes to. So he took that skill and has risen up to the occasion to serve food people in the war zone. So again, not that he hasn't done any sit work or any other work, but I'm just trying to put in a category that was kind of his moment that I have to rise up and do something about it. And of course, I picked many people in the act category, but I felt Clinton was a great example for me, not from a political perspective. And as I say, I have John McCain, so as you know, this was not a book. I have respect for everybody. And for me, I kind of put it there because he deliberately acted, and I watched him for quite some time because I was a member of the Clinton Global Initiative and on the philanthropy side of it, that how do I build bridges? How do I act upon people who may disagree with me, but have respect for your views and have come to some way that we can get things done. So for me, I'm a big believer of getting things done. Even if I don't agree with you, Kevin, but I'm sure I can find some common ground with you if we believe that we both agree that we need to address the issue of child trafficking. I'm just making this up. And maybe we have severe disagreement in terms of many issues in life. But I guarantee you, if we have common purpose, you and I can find a way to act together.
Yeah.
So I think that's what my takeaway from that. I mean, and it was just a deliberate attempt to make sure that we don't see that as a one size fits all. And we all come from a different perspective, different position in life, different stage in life.
Yeah.
And we can take that opportunity to do something.
Well, and you're obviously calling all of us to act, as far as that goes. But yeah, I do. I just appreciated that kind of the pen is mightier than sword. But the point being that they're both great, or the great weapons, great tools. Let's call them tools, great tools. My favorite would be the pen. It would be the word, to use that tool my gosh, I spend my time doing this, going through books, incredible messages. And that's where I'm going to participate more than an actual sword and going out onto the field.
I'll give you some tips for the listener because I think it's useful. This is not in the book, but I think as I'm getting questions, I wanted to try to see if I can do a framework for people who are listening and reading the book. Because I have, just like you, I have not read as many books usually, but I read my share of books. And sometimes it's hard to take away. I go to conferences sometime and I spend the entire day or sometimes 3 days. And I always say, what have I done? What I'm going to go home with? What I do with this information I gather? I write notes. So with those in mind, I kind of say, okay, let me start with this one thing I kind of I give a name called gems, like the stone. I believe you're all gems. So GEMSS, easy to remember. So let me take you through that list because I think it helps people to specifically be what all this discussion we had almost for close to an hour.
Okay.
So for me, G stands for get involved. Doesn't matter how we get involved in some capacity or form. And this is what I call, if you remember, you and I talked about engaged citizenship. So getting involved means we are an engaged citizen. That means we are participating in our democracy in any shape or form. Get involved. Number 2, I call the E is empower others, which is a critical point I mentioned. Sometimes it's just mentorship. Empowering others that goes for any leader in any organization or in government or in philanthropy. Make sure you empower other people, it's not about me, it's empowering others. So that's what I call it, the E part of it. The M, and I touched on it a little bit with you earlier, this whole idea of micro-philanthropy. And the reason I keep repeating that, because people think giving is such a big thing. I think a child can give. When you're buying a fortune, when you go to your girls' cookies, everything is a part of, you're teaching your kids to give. So micro-philanthropy is a big thing for me. So that's GEM. The last 2 is equally significant. The S, the first S is showing up. Kevin, I have seen in my life so many times, I haven't done nothing at all. The fact I went to a friend's house because I learned he or she was not well, or they're having some tough time, or I made a phone call to say, hey, I'm there. Can I do something? A lot of time I didn't do anything at all. I just told them that I'm there. Yeah. Showing up is a big part of what I'm talking about. So that's my S, first S. And the last one is, the second S is start small. So GEMSS is a framework I think it sometimes helps us to kind of go through the process, think about it in our own day-to-day activity, and that we feel that, we can actually implement some of the things we're talking about in a very small way,
I'm interested in you said micro-philanthropy, that you're helping bring my attention, back to this. I mean, we have so many people, or I run into people who, that's part of their bio. They're a philanthropist. And your message has gotten me to thinking, who shouldn't be a philanthropist? And am I a philanthropist? I don't have that in my bio, but do I want to be a philanthropist? Is that part of, I like that concept for my own identity of, I'm the kind of guy who does X. I'm the kind of guy who's an athlete. I always have been. It's something that I have great joy, and it's a part of me. I identify with being an athlete, and I want to identify with somebody who cares about others, their evolution. I want people to grow and become more of themselves and have more joy and have fulfillment. I want that for me. I want that for them. I'm the kind of guy who, eats this way. I'm the kind of guy who relates this way. I'm the kind of guy. So in this, am I the kind of person who would relate to the people in this book, people who cared about something and they go out and do that? And honestly, Neil, I look at that and go, I think I've kind of fallen away from that somewhat. Again, the work that I do here, I think I get testimony that serves people and helps people. But would an audit of my life call me a philanthropist? Questionable.
I'm deliberately using the word micro philanthropist because think about Kevin that way. This is important for me to share with you. And I'll give you two very specific examples. I'll come to that in a minute. When my son was young, I used to tell him that, Ryan, when you do something for somebody, and he was very young, middle school, and now he's, 29, don't expect anything back. And he was confused because that's, it doesn't kind of quite didn't get it. I say, it comes back to you in some other form. Don't expect something back from the person you are doing something for. And I'll give an example. Happened almost a year and a half ago. He was with a pharma company, and now he left. He's doing his MBA. He calls me. He said, Dad, a very high senior official, I bump into him in the corridor, and he learned that I'm going to Ireland for a visit. And he called me in his office and gave me the key of his apartment in Ireland. And I know that he is a senior. So I said, remember, Ryan, I told you almost 15 years ago that it will come back to you some other. It's a small story, but the point of the story is that when you give something, it doesn't come back from the same person or the same way. It comes back to you in a different way. Yeah. So I really believe in that. And coming back to the philanthropy concept, as much as you're giving, you're also getting from somebody. So it's a cycle, Kevin. I think we have to kind of really get into that mindset that whatever I'm giving, and it's giving not about money, right? We just talked about that. Giving can be time. Giving can be just my presence, my attention, my listening. All of them are giving. So I think I'm deliberately using that. And sure, micro-philanthropy is about some form of material giving. But we're also receiving. And that's what I think, if that's the culture we can create, that's a wonderful culture to be, that we are giving and we are receiving in some shape or form.
Well, I appreciate that. And you actually mentioned that earlier. You used the word selfish, that I'm not totally sure why, Neil, but for some reason it helped me. Coming back from my religious background that had this, the word that was used was selfless, to do something selflessly and sacrificially and whatnot. And I think I always struggled with it because I still felt, if I'm helping someone, I still felt selfish to a degree. And it was actually a writer, Anthony DeMello, who I'm a fan of, who then talked about it specifically. I'd never heard it. And he says, he kind of took aim at it and says, I don't think we do anything selflessly. We get something out of it, which is what you're saying. So if I take $1 from a homeless guy, I get $1. If I give a homeless guy $1, I get the feel good of giving him $1. And Anthony would say it's a more evolved selfishness on the giving side. And I think we get deeper fulfillment, but it kind of helped me to go, no, I get something out of it. And actually, I think I get more out of it. I think the selfish aspect helped me.
And it is, and I'll give you another little bit different, but we are not have the time to go into this today. Capitalism is a beautiful thing. Right? Capitalism, by definition, is a beautiful thing. But the word I use, I call it inclusive capitalism. Okay. Inclusive capitalism, right? That means it's a capitalist society, but in a way you're doing it, it includes others as well. So it's a mindset. And in the beginning of the conversation, or somewhere, we talked about the data and research after research that showed very clearly how giving helps us, not just from longevity perspective, from happiness perspective, from neurological, psychological. So there are things that we are getting back very clearly. And I think more we talk about it openly without feeling guilty about it, I think it's better it is, that it's absolutely helping us. And I think we'll be a lot more open about it in terms of this journey.
Well, and it does have me also in that same line of thought, Neil. It has me thinking that as I am prone to get focused on me, myself, my desires, my problems, my whatnot, that it is often so helpful to just go out and serve somebody else. It helps. It's like medicine for me. Matter of fact, it was Lynn Twist. We had Lynn Twist on the show at one point, renowned humanitarian. And that was her focus of her book. What was her living a committed life. And that was her own story. She says, oh my gosh, it helped her own spirit so much when she started devoting to other people and she quit worrying about herself. Now, I don't want to be simplistic. I don't want to be insensitive to people who have real problems, but I've experienced that it's such a help to me. Again, back to selfishness. It's the fulfillment to get my head out of my own rear sometimes and my own issues to go help someone else. I think it's a reminder I continue to need, Neil.
Generosity fuels personal growth. Generosity fuels personal growth, happiness, and longevity. It's been proven.
Okay. Well, I'm going to call this show Fuel for Our Personal Growth then. And just a great resource. I look at it as a resource book. I'm going to share it. I was just with some of my kids and, I want to share the book with them as a resource tool. And again, we didn't even get into so many examples. I mean, you go through and I literally went, Neil, through every single chapter and looked at the person and the lesson learned. And I took notes on that. And even that just opened up so much. So I'm just grateful that you have done what you've done to put the book together, to bring it out. Thank you for being here and helping me understand more of how to do more good and giving me tangible resources to help me engage in a way that's authentic to me and is fitting for me. So, Neil, thank you.
I totally enjoyed this conversation, Kevin. I did. Thank you.
Likewise. Well, thanks for joining us in the discussion. Again, that's Neil Ghosh, Ghosh. And you can find him at neilghosh.com. The book, again, that if you heard this and are eager to see the resources that fit you and how to get involved with them and ways to just enact that giving, that style of giving, that type of giving in your life today, you'll want to get the book and the resources in each chapter. And it's called Do More Good, Inspiring Lessons from Extraordinary People. And again, if you want personal guidance in applying what you hear on these shows in your life, connect with me, kmiller@kevinmiller.co. Till next time, here's to the evolving you.